In today's beauty shoot, we're photographing this gorgeous headpiece. And guess what? The inspiration has come from AI art. Hey everybody, Lindsay Adler here, and there's a big question I have for all of you, and something I've been thinking a lot about. Is AI a friend or a foe? Is it good for creatives as a tool, or is it a threat? Is it going to take our jobs? It is undoubtedly going to have a massive impact on the future and our industry, but we're still deciding and we're still crafting how it is going to affect that. And so I have conversations all the time with fellow photographers and other creatives and hairstylists and makeup artists, and I was having a conversation with my friend Lory Sun. Lory is an insanely talented designer. She makes so many beautiful things. She makes headpieces and dresses and corsets and you name it. And we're having a conversation about AI, and I introduced her to a program called Midjourney. And this is one of the tools that allows creators to make AI art. And when she started messing around with it, she realized how strong, how incredible of a tool it can be to help her generate more inspiration, more ideas for her own designs. And so she started experimenting and seeing what Midjourney would give her when she prompted it for avant-garde headpieces. And so eventually she came up with this AI image. And so she reached out and she said, Lindsay, I came up with this. Why don't I bring this to life and you photograph it? And so when you're photographing something inspired by AI art, you can try to recreate it, you can take it as a base for inspiration, and then as a photographer, like you could match the lighting, the makeup, or you can take it a totally different direction. And so I find it really useful because I can take one piece of the art and then add my own style and my own twist and come up with something totally unique and true to me as an artist. And so that's what you're going to see here today. So as you can see on our beautiful model, Lory took that headpiece inspiration and man, she got it really close, but she definitely added her own twist. She did have some of that beautiful tulle that was in the original inspiration, but we decided it looked a little bit better, cleaner. So we've got rhinestones, and we have this beautiful structure. And so then my team put together this entire look. So we've taken the rhinestones and brought it through on the makeup. We also have some of the bedazzling and pearls on the top. So now it is a complete look rather than just being the headpiece. So my next decision is, how do I photograph this piece? There are so many different ways I could take it. And in fact, I did quite a bit of experimentation. And that's one of the things, is that there's no right or wrong way to light something. It's what story are you trying to tell? What is the mood and the emotion? And sometimes if you get stuck, maybe even the AI art helps drive your creativity. Maybe it came up with a beautiful pose or beautiful lighting. Now in this case, when I looked at the beautiful bedazzled headpiece, I thought it looked very regal, like it should be on a queen or a goddess. And so I'm going to go with something like a kind of a goddess in the clouds, or maybe something that's vaguely religious in feel. And so for this shot, I ended up using 3 different lights. So I'm going to turn them off and build them in one by one so you can see how they contribute. Then I'll show you a couple little extra flares, including color grading, that I add to bring the image together. So let's turn off all of the lights. And then we're just going to begin with our very first strobe. Okay, so the first strobe that we have here is a 5-degree grid. Grids are incredibly powerful, and if you check the links in the description below, I actually have a video that talks about the power of grids and how they change your photography. Now, grids create concentrated pockets of light. This one fits onto the ProPhoto D2, but they're also ones you can add to zoom reflectors. Now, this is going to give her just a concentrated and poppy pocket of light on the face. So let's start with light number 1. Hi. And just hold your pose, that's perfect. Now, one of the reasons that I wanted to start with a concentrated light is that I could light the image in different zones. In other words, I could light the face how I wanted it, have fill light at the strength I wanted, and then light the background differently. If you use one big, broad, soft light source, for example, it makes the setup simpler, but you don't have as much control. So as you can see here, I have that nice bright light on the center of the subject's face. It's nice and concentrated. And then I can also point it a little bit at the headpiece. Now, a benefit of this is that the headpiece is made out of rhinestones. When you hit rhinestones with a hard light, that's when they become more specular. That's when they sparkle, which you're going to see the effect that has when we add some filters to the equation. So light number 1, it's nice, it's concentrated, but there's no depth to the image. So the second light I'm going to add to the scene is going to be a fill light. You can see that down the dress, underneath her jawline, everything gets a little bit dark. That's because the grid concentrated the light. So our second light is a Pro Photo Strobe with a 1x4 foot strip softbox. This is going to fill in those shadows. It'll also give us a little bit more sparkle on the gems and the dress. So let me add light number 2. Okay, let me take a shot. All right, so this has a couple effects. Not only did it fill in the shadows, but you can see it's giving us much more of an ethereal, glowing look. Like this is definitely giving me more of that religious icon feel. But lastly, she's just kind of blending into the background. Like there's no separation there. And so what I have behind my subject is a printed cloud background. I used a company called Cape Backdrops that makes really inexpensive backgrounds and you can custom design them. So this is a sky background that I got off a stock photo agency. I printed it out and it's going to allow the subject to look like she's in a storm or in an environment or outdoors. It makes it a little bit moodier rather than just shooting on a plain background. At first I tried like a solid gray background, but it just didn't have enough depth or interest or mood or drama to it. And so the sky background behind her is going to give me that little extra something. So we're going to turn on our last light, which is going to be a background light. The light I have behind the subject is a strobe on a floor stand and there's no modifier on it at all. It's just meant to kick illumination onto that background. All right, so let's add our third light. Perfect. And one of the things that you'll notice about the background is it does give us depth, but you can kind of tell it's not real. So a couple of recommendations if you want this to be more of a realistic in-camera composite, as I call it. First of all, I recommend that you back up and use a longer lens. The longer lens is going to give you more compression and it'll also give you a narrower depth of field, which will make the background a little bit softer. And then, based on what lens you have, go to its widest aperture or aim for a wider aperture. 4.0 at a minimum, maybe 2.8 even wider. It'll make the background appear softer and make it look like the subject's on location. But if you go with a really wide aperture, make sure that you can control your ambient light. Turn off any overhead lights, make sure that there's no windows nearby, because at a wide aperture that will start to show up and it will really ruin and overpower the drama that you're creating with your strobes. Okay, so we have all the elements of the lighting in the scene, but next I am going to add some creative filters. Now, the shot would be fine without them, but the reason I wanted to add the filters is twofold. First of all, I wanted to feel more ethereal and I wanted to complement the headpiece. So the first filter that I am going to add is a 4-point star filter. What this is going to do is take any specular highlights that the main light creates and it's going to give them a starburst effect. So I really think that adds another dimension and really draws the eye to that headpiece. So I'm going to add that to the equation and then we have one more. So instantly you can see the starburst all over the headpiece. Now this last filter that I want to add is a black chrome mist. I add this very often when I want to create something that's softer, glowier, more painterly, a little less digital, make it feel a little bit more filmic. And so what it does is it takes any highlights and it makes them glow, it makes them bloom. And so the starburst will already have the star effect, but it'll make them glow a little bit, and it will also make her skin look even a little bit more porcelain. So I'm going to add that and just show you the little bit of haze and ambiance it adds. Now this is not a huge difference, but you'll just see that her skin gets a little smoother and everything becomes a little softer, a little less contrast. And so typically if I want to still have contrast but like the smooth skin, I'll go back in and add a little bit more contrast in post. Now speaking of post-processing, I am shooting tethered, and the reason I do this is so I can see what the colors look like, the contrast. I can see how everything is coming together so that I can make tweaks to my lighting or to the scene before it's too late. I can actually see it while I'm shooting. So I want to show you just a couple of changes I would make to this image. So I'm going to pop over here into Capture One. Okay, so first of all, one of the things that I want to do is unify the colors in this scene. I feel like the dress is a little warmer than I want it to be, and the hair is a little bit more blue. And so I can go into the color editor here, and I can desaturate some of the blues so that it goes a little bit more gray. Next, I can go into the reds, yellows, and oranges, which are skin tones as well as the color of the dress, and I can just pull out a little bit of saturation there. And so you can see it's getting me a little bit more in the painterly vibe, but when I started to desaturate the reds, it lost the color in her lips, so I'm going to put the color back there. All right, now, I already mentioned that I added those two filters, the Black Pro Mist and the Star filter. Those decrease contrast, so I'm going to add a teeny bit of contrast. I add about 15 points and a little bit of clarity. And I think overall, I'll desaturate just a little bit. So here's before and here's after, and it started to unify the color palette. that is the base that I would give myself for a color grade. And then I could get more creative. So for example, I could come down to my color balance and I could start shifting and maybe add another cool color in the highlights. So I could add a little, maybe a tiny bit of cyan. Or maybe I go and add some blues into the shadows. So I can start getting even more creative. But what I like about this is since these are raw files, I can also do that after the fact. So this is my base color grade, and then of course I can get more creative and add colors to the highlights, midtones, and shadows later on, but I think this looks great. So I am going to copy the effect up and apply it down, so as I shoot, those color changes are going to apply automatically. Now as I capture these images, I'm going to be shooting with the Canon R5 and the Canon 24-105. This is my go-to camera lens combo, and I'll be shooting at 4.0 so I can make the background just a little bit out of focus. All right, so we have the beautiful headpiece, the background, the lighting, the styling, the color grading, the creative filters, all of those things coming together, and now it's time to get the shot. Okay, so can I have you put your hands soft here? Great. Because there are clouds behind the subject, I also want to introduce a new toy that I've been obsessed with called the Smoke Genie. It is a portable, handheld smoke and haze machine. And it's going to give me a little bit of extra environment and atmosphere to this shot. So what is your conclusion? Is AI and AI art a friend or foe? And I am guessing that it probably exists somewhere in between the two. And I found this to be a very useful resource to help me come up with more ideas. I'm inspired by so many different pieces of art, whether it's cinema or painting or illustrators, and this is just another tool. I also know that my friend Lory Sun, which you can check out the links to her in the description, she has found this a useful tool as well, and she's been using it to fuel her next creative projects, whether it's wardrobe or an avant-garde headpiece like you see here. So if you want to see the gear used in the making of these images, be sure to check out the links in the description below, and of course visit Adorama.com. And I'm experimenting with this quite a bit, whether it's AI inspired makeup or headpieces or lighting. So you'll definitely want to like and subscribe if you want to check out more of this AI inspired content. See you next time, guys.